In all honesty, I wasn't going to make a video talking about the whole global situation we find ourselves in at the moment, but I started scripting videos about, various aspects of photography and filmmaking, and it just felt silly to ignore it and a bit trivial to just carry on making videos as if nothing's happening. So I thought I would say something, but I 100% understand that many of you won't want to hear this and you're kind of sick of people talking about it. Please feel free to skip this video and I will catch up with you down the road. And for those of you who stick around, I will make an attempt to be brief, at least for me. So here in the UK, we're finally on lockdown. For some reason, it took us a little longer to get here than some other countries, but we're all here now. And one of the big reasons I didn't want to make a video on this subject is because I honestly don't know how much I have to say. I'm in the same boat as everybody else. I don't really understand what's going on. I'm taking in a lot of information. I don't know which of it to trust and which not. None of us really know how bad this actually is and is going to get, how long it's going to last. So I suppose a lot of me is uncertain. I'm not talking to you as if I know anything you don't know. I suppose I'm just sharing where I'm at, as everyone else is at the moment, hoping you find some comfort and safety in numbers in at least some of the things I'm going to say. Now, admittedly, I haven't been sick, and I don't personally yet know anybody who has, so I've been shielded from a lot of the worst of this to this point. There have obviously been changes that I've had to deal with, but nothing on the level that some other people are having to go through at the moment. But sitting at home and having the extra time that I have at the moment, I have done a lot of processing for myself, and I thought I'd share some of the things that I'm thinking that I've found encouraging and that are helping me to sort of put everything in perspective. Let's start with the obvious, because I know a lot of you are freelancers like I am, and this year has totally been turned on its head. None of us planned for this. I mean, I've just sat this week crossing things out of my calendar that have either been cancelled or postponed indefinitely, and I now have a block of 6 months with no work coming in and everything is dried up, which obviously creates a lot of unsettling feelings and anxiety around how I'm going to make it through this. And I know many of you are in exactly the same boat, perhaps in worse situations than I am. And like with any big changes with far-reaching ramifications, it doesn't hit you all at once. If you're like me, you've been sitting at home for the last little while and things hit you in waves because you suddenly realize, oh, and also that thing, I won't be able to do that. And this thing also has to be canceled and I need to make a plan there and let people know. And that plan that I had for that money that was coming in to pay those bills, that now can't happen and I really need to scramble to make a plan. I mean, in my case, many of the videos I had planned coming up can't be made just because of circumstance and I need to make a plan there. I had ideas for photo projects that I really wanted to get started now. They've had to be put on the shelf. I've had events cancelled, workshops cancelled. I can't do that teaching that I wanted to do. I even wanted to move cities this year and had planned within the next month or two to be out of London, but all that has to be put on the shelf because we have to take care of this first. All that's to say that you and I both know that things are going to be rough for a lot of people for a while, and I'm painfully aware that I am far from the most affected by this, that there are people who are way worse off than me and who will need my help and support. But when it comes to work specifically, I take a little bit of comfort in the fact that we're all in this together. There's nobody falling behind anybody, and I didn't mess up. I didn't do something that means my business is now going to tank. There's no mistakes being made. We are all in a collectively very difficult position. We're all going to be set back to varying degrees. And the best thing we can do now is to put all the competition aside, all the thoughts about who's falling behind who. None of that matters. Our job now is just to take care of each other as best we can and pick all that stuff up on the other side of this thing. All right, so let's talk suggestions about how we can use this time well, because we're all trying to do the responsible thing to stay home, to stay isolated, so we don't help to spread this virus to the most vulnerable in our society. And we can't control that situation, but we can control our actions. So let's find some practical suggestions. In the normal run of our lives, most of us have long lists of ways that we want to improve ourselves, things we want to read or teach ourselves or work on, but most of us use the excuse that we are too busy to get to most of it. Well, now we get to see whether that is just an excuse because we have nothing but time now. And if we're deliberate about using this time, we can come out the other end of it having worked on ourselves aggressively. Maybe it's even a good idea to put together a little curriculum for yourself. Make a list of things you'd like to teach yourself and then scour the internet for YouTube tutorials or sign up to paid online courses with things like Skillshare or Masterclass and put yourself together a course that you're going to take yourself through so that you can be deliberate about teaching yourself new things while you're stuck at home. For the photographers out there, this is the time time that you can actually go through that back catalog of images that you're boasting to your friends that you just can't get to because you shoot so much. You now have the time and can't shoot as much. So it's time to go digging through those catalogs that have turned into these mountains of images that you have no idea what's inside, to pull out old ones, to maybe re-edit them, to start playing with some sequences, because maybe you'll come out the other end of this with enough material to put a book together. If you're like me, you probably got a long watch list of movies on whatever streaming service you have to use, and a lot of those movies will be films that you know are beautifully constructed or will have something to teach you or say to you or will affect you, but you also know they're going to require more patience. So on any given evening in your normal run of things, an Avengers movie and some popcorn just seems like an easy way to go. But now we have time to go and watch those and to give them the attention they deserve. And maybe even watch them twice, which is something I often do. I watch a movie the first time to let that story wash over me, and then I go back and pay attention to the cinematography and watch how it was made and just learn from how it's constructed. And now's also the time to go to your bookshelf and pick off that book that you've been meaning to read for years but have just never got to. And I find it helpful to do things like give yourself a dedicated spot in your house where you read, maybe a particular chair, somewhere comfortable. Go make yourself your favorite drink and settle in for a good chunk of time to plow through a few chapters. And also find it helpful to have a notebook next to me just to jot down thoughts I might be having, whether it's related to that book and I want to remember them later, or things that just pop up into your head that you think I should do that. Just jot it down, forget about it, and get back to focusing on taking in what you're reading. And speaking of carving out blocks of time, maybe it's a good idea to give yourself a rough schedule. Get yourself up at the same time every morning as if you were going to work. Give yourself a block of time for exercise, a block of time to get all the emails and the admin-y stuff done, a block of time maybe for doing some online courses every day, maybe a couple of hours, a block of time for reading, a block of time for making stuff, a block of time for reaching out to friends who you know might be struggling through this. Even a loose routine like this can stop your days from just sort of slipping away from you because you get stuck in 8 hours of online gaming. And yes, now you know a little bit more about me. A schedule, a bit of structure can actually help time like this pass well. And as I said, I think it's a good idea that part of that schedule every day be making something or creating something. And I found it so heartening to look at the internet just explode with creativity at a time like this, with people penning poems and baking cakes and doing podcasts and live streams. And I've actually been doing a live stream on my Instagram with Jeffrey Sidoris. We'll hopefully be doing at least 2, maybe 3 a week if you want to tune into those. But people are writing and making videos and shooting at-home photo projects. And speaking of which, my friend Martin Rotz, who you would have seen in a recent video, came up with a great suggestion to use a hashtag. So people who are shooting these at-home photography projects while they're in quarantine can post and connect with other people doing the same. So we came up with scene from home, scene like scene in a film. And the idea is that you're not just going to post an image. First of all, before you post your image, and this is my challenge to you to build some community, is post a meaningful comment on 3 other people's photos who posted with that hashtag, then post your image. And hopefully that will come back to you because everyone will be doing the same, and there will be 3 times as much meaningful interaction between us as there are images being posted. And that way we'll build some community. So at the end of the day, we just don't know how long things will be like this. Will things be back to normal in a few weeks or a few months, or will it take even longer? None of us really know. We just don't have the information. And I, for one, wanted to make sure I had as much structure and routine in my life as early as I possibly could, so that this time now will pass measurably and as constructively as possible. Okay, so let's talk about the tough stuff. And I want to be really careful here because I know that everyone is dealing with this in their own way. I mean, I've had conversations this week that have ranged from people telling me they think our government should be lying to the population, telling them it's way worse than it is, so they're scared into compliance and behaving themselves, to other people who just watch the counters go up the whole time, watching the numbers, filling their face with as much negativity, being as present to it as possible, and they won't hear a positive thing because they somehow feel it's in bad taste. I want to give you some perspective that's helping me, in the hope that it helps you. So let's be clear, this is not fun times at home, this is real stuff. I mean, beyond the economic recession that's almost certainly going to come out of this, where many people will lose their jobs and livelihoods, we're dealing with hundreds of thousands of people who are very sick, more who are likely to get sick, and already thousands of people who've died. And that is very real pain many people are dealing with and are still going to be dealing with for a while. And I know even if you're not sick, there will be those of you sitting at home who struggle with anxiety, who will be worried, and you will be battling through things at the moment, especially if you're feeling isolated. My best advice to you is reach out and talk to somebody as quickly as possible. Pick up the phone, contact someone online. Your friends are waiting to talk to you. And those of you who don't struggle with anxiety as much, you know who those friends are who struggle. Take the initiative to call them and find out how they're doing and spend some time talking to them and giving them some comfort. I saw a great meme this week that just said something like, "Hey introverts, could you take your head out of your books for a minute and call your extroverted friends? We're not okay." And we have to be grateful that we live in this era where we have things like the internet and the ability to connect with each other in the ways that we do, because imagine this was 100 years ago, how isolated we would all be feeling. Use the tools at your disposal. Use the internet, use the phone, use social media, anything you can to feel connected with other people in ways that bring you comfort. It is important. But what helps me the most at times like this is to hold two things in tension. On the one side, to stay present to people's very real pain at the moment and the difficulty of the situation we're in. And on the other side, to keep zooming out, to keep looking at the bigger picture and to keep injecting facts and perspective back into the situation and into my own thinking. And it helps to remind myself that this is not the end. This is a very difficult time for our species. There is a lot of pain and suffering going around and a lot of big changes. But worse things than this have happened to our species in the past, and worse things will happen in the future. This is part of our journey. I've said it on this channel before that we're forged in the shadows, and I believe that's as true on the collective level as it is on an individual level. And I hope that we will all come out of this collectively stronger, acknowledging, of course, that there's a huge tragedy in the fact that we're not all going to come out of this. One of my favorite authors, Richard Rohr, talks about the fact that we only grow as a species in times of great love or great pain. And this to me seems like a time of both. There's no apathy anymore. We can't take anything for granted, and we are questioning anything and everything. And hopefully at the end of this, when the dust settles, we are going to come out of this together stronger. And we know that it's not over, that there's more to come, and we're all going to have to dig deep and exercise empathy by reaching out to people, by grieving with those who are grieving, by comforting those who are feeling anxious and stressed and worried, and by practically supporting those who are struggling, which is going to mean personal sacrifice if we're all going to make it through this together. But those of us who want to be a help to other people during this time, it's going to be really important for us to zoom out, to keep injecting perspective back into our thinking, to keep us from becoming overwhelmed by everything that's going on. Let me give you some things that are giving me a bit of perspective that I keep injecting back into my thinking that are helping me. Things like the fact that we are rethinking the way that we live and interact with each other. We're connecting and reaching out and creating and looking after each other in ways that I haven't seen in my lifetime. Like you, I'm watching videos of Italians singing to each other across balconies to keep each other's spirits up. I'm watching people choose to stay home, not to protect themselves because they might be young and healthy and they know the chances of this being a problem for them are small, but they're staying at home out of an act of selfless love because they don't want to spread this to someone who's more vulnerable, someone who's older or has pre-existing conditions. And I'm watching people connect with each other and love each other in really creative ways. In my country here in the UK, just 2 days ago, our government put out a call asking for people to volunteer to help out our National Health Service, especially in taking care of the elderly, who we often ignore in our society to our shame. And in one 24-hour period, over 400,000 people volunteered, and I find that incredibly heartening. In response to this tragedy, China just legislated to stop the trade of exotic animals in their country, and this will hopefully have knock-on effects around the world that might be able to put a stop to the poaching of endangered animals worldwide. Our planet as a whole is taking a much needed deep breath in as we start to turn down our industries for a while, and our environment is given a little space to recover. And not only that, that when this thing is done and it's run its course and we are back and our governments now have all this data about what happens when we take action, things like that might lead to legislation being passed that turns the tide of what we're doing to our environment and ultimately saves millions of human lives in the future. These things don't change how bad the situation is, but beware of myopic thinking that has you just looking at the hardships, the difficulties, getting caught up in spiraling news cycles, watching number counters, or being terrified by anecdotes. I know some people feel that it's almost a way to honor people's pain, to keep looking at it and keep filling our minds with it, but you're not helping them, and you're not helping yourself. You're just building up worry and anxiety in yourself, which actually at the end of the day makes you less available to help other people when they really need it. So try and open up to the whole picture and hold it all in its messy tension, both the real pain and struggles that people are going through and how you can practically help them, and for yourself also the bigger picture and the perspective, and reminding yourself that this is not the end. There is hope, and we need to guard it within ourselves. It's not disrespecting people's pain. On the contrary, I think it's giving us the inner strength to be there for those who really need us in more meaningful ways. Grieve with those who grieve. Support those who need your help in any way you can think to do it. And for yourself, keep injecting perspective. Zoom out. Remind yourself of the bigger picture. This too will pass. And in the meantime, guard hope.